Greetings and salutations, this is Imperator Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
We have a new unboxing video for you. We've just had Christmas and New Year's, and because of that we have new things to unpack.
Yep.
Which is always jolly good fun. And plus I can't build them until we've done an unboxing video, so just have to get it done, don't we?
Yeah.
Right, this is the Pike and Shotte starter army. 80 plastic pike and muskets, 24 cavalry, a bunch of 10 firelocks and some flags and stuff. So we'll just pop it open and begin. So here are the flags. We've got two sets of flags. Let's have a look what we've got. We've got Royalist and Parliament flags for both sides. One lot all burnt and messed up and one lot perfectly normal. I'm not really sure how you put the burnt and messed up ones together really, because what I prefer to do is put a normal flag on and then burn and mess it up.
Yeah, they look fine to me. I like that.
Yeah, well, we could put them together, yeah. So they're the flags. You've got quite a few different regiments you can have. I am not going to be sticking to regiments particularly.
So for our veteran troops, we can have like burnt flags cost them in combat.
Yeah, we could do that, So let's sort out what we've got. We've got a command unit, that's a command unit. This is going to be a lot of stuff to unpack. Okay, so we've got another command unit. And firelocks, cavalry, more cavalry, more cavalry, some horses, more firelocks, and then actual infantry. There we go, and a load of bases for eBay. Of course, we don't use these bases, do we? We make our own bases, or we use the round bases. So what should we start with?
Let's start with what I don't know what it is. Well, what are these warlock things?
Firelocks. So we'll start with the firelock, shall we? Right. That's quite good. The base of the box is coming quite useful. These are the firelocks. You get 10 of them in the box. You can buy firelocks separate. I think it's about 18 in a box. But we've got all these together in this. What you typically get is a chap who's running along, he's in standard combat gear, but he's carrying a firelock musket. Now one good thing about this is you get two separate weapons. Two separate muskets. So that's going to be quite useful for converting figures and stuff if you need extra muskets.
Yep.
So you get yourself some spare muskets, and I suppose you could also make normal infantry into firelocks as well. The only difference is between the firelock and the normal musket. I know they get a lot of really good press, but the only real difference is the firelock has a device which, when you pull the trigger, pushes the fire into the pan, and the matchlock it just puts a burning match into the pan. That's the main thing. One good thing about firelocks, well, theoretically, is it's a lot harder to get your for your weapon to not fire, and it's a lot better when it's raining and stuff like that. Here are the chaps in question. That's the muskets. So what do you want to know about them?
Well, what do you mean? Are they like the head of the infantry or something?
Originally, when they first came out, the muskets were slightly more reliable than a normal musket. They didn't just use, they weren't just firelocks, they were wheel locks, flint locks. Oh god, a huge list. I used to be in the seal knot, so we used to do this sort of stuff all the time. And the guys in the seal knot really disliked the wheel mechanism, because especially with flintlocks and stuff like that, they just don't fire. They break, the flint falls out.
So what's the point of these firelock musketeers
The
compared to the normal infantry?
Originally they were used for skirmish troops. I think they were first deployed in Ireland and Scotland, in the skirmishes there, because the weather tended to be slightly more inclement and there was a lot more water around, bogs and stuff. The English rather, had drained a lot of the bogs, whereas the Irish and the others didn't, so you had to walk through a lot of water and it tended to get your musket was more likely to get wet in the unseasonable weather, and they were just slightly more reliable. Dragoons used them as well, back when dragoons used to actually dismount to fight.
So if they're more reliable, why do you only have 10 of them?
Because you only get 10 in the box. At the beginning of the war there wouldn't have been many around. There would have been a handful of soldiers issued these things, because they were a lot more expensive to make because they had moving mechanisms. If you look, there's a nice close-up of a chap on the cover of the box. This is a normal musket, and you've got this stick coming up here and you just pull the trigger and it just lets the stick go down. The stick's holding a burning match. The wheel lock has a wheel here which is theoretically better to use, but it's really early technology for the period. Muskets in general weren't that reliable back then.
Yeah, holding a burning matchstick.
Oh yeah, a wheel lock would be better than a firelock. A wheel lock would be a lot better than holding a burning match.
So what happens if like standing there for a while and then there's no enemies?
The match burns down. You have to light another match.
It's useless.
Yeah, and some soldiers they would have to try and keep their match burning for huge periods of time, so they'd be cutting cotton constantly and have wads of cotton all over them, ready to relight to keep the fire going.
Fair enough.
Yeah, whereas the wheel lock, you don't have as much problem with that. Generally. But I think the flintlock was probably better, but from my own personal experiences with flint, the flint does not stay in the holder. It breaks. You have two pincers that hold it, and it hits against a piece of steel that's like a cap of steel, and it creates a spark which sets the powder off, which then ignites the musket ball. It ignites the charge that fires the musket ball. But I've found them to be useless. Like they go off when they feel like it. But I'm sure if you lived in the period, you would be using this stuff every day, and you would be a lot more used to using it. And I would assume there would be better ways of using it. Anyway, that's the firelocks. They were generally used. The box that they come in is sold as the firelock storming party, because they were slightly more reliable and therefore better for troops doing assaults, things like that. But generally they'd be used for skirmishing and things like that. Yeah?
Yep.
Any more questions?
No, not these skull figures.
Right, well they're the firelocks. Which one do you want to do next?
Officers.
The officers, you get 2 officer packs in this box. You get 1 officer in the other box. I've got some of the other boxes as well. So, you get the officers aren't bad. They're quite well posed. They've got a nice sash, or one of the officers has got a sash. You've got a drummer, which is kind of, you have to use him as a drummer. You can't really convert him unless you really want to hack away at the figure. And then you've got a sergeant or a lieutenant here who is not wearing a sash. The pistols is one of the cool things about it. You get pistols with this one. The pistols and swords, they're alright. I would have preferred to be able to pose the figures differently. You don't really get much of an option to attach the weapons. You end up with spare stuff that you can't really use on other figures.
Actually, here's a big question.
What?
How come through the ages, War 1, War 2 and this and onwards, how come officers always have pistols and the soldiers have the good weapons? So the officers have the same weapons as a soldier, then just a lousy pistol, which won't do much?
Okay, well, let's skip forward to modern times, right? The officer generally carries some sort of automatic weapon. Not modern times, World War II, World War II. The officer carries an automatic weapon, something like a Thompson, a Sten, or an MP40, something like that. And the reason you carry those is so the officer can spray the enemy while his troops are doing something. So it's you see in films they're running around with Thompsons and MP40s. The Germans have MP40s, the Americans have Thompsons, and they're spraying away at the Japanese or the Russians, whoever they're fighting. No, they didn't do that. The officers, you're not going to hit anything with an MP40 anyway. You're not going to hit much with a Thompson.
And then you use that to keep the enemy down while your soldiers go around them.
Yes, you just spray the area, and that keeps the enemy's heads down. That's what it's for. The officer is keeping the enemy's heads down, while the officers' fire teams usually have 3 or 4.
And what about War One, etc.?
World War One, an officer tended to carry a stick with a pistol, and the swagger stick was to point at things. It's very useful. I know something else about swagger sticks, which we'll make another video on one day if you want. I have Grandpapa's swagger stick.
A revolver.
A revolver, yes. A revolver is very good. That's got 6 shots. You can fire all 6 shots off very quickly.
And why don't your men have one of them?
Some soldiers did carry revolvers if they could afford to buy one. But again, revolvers don't hit much. They're not very accurate. I know when you go to the shooting range, you can stand there and shoot at the little target. Yeah, you have someone throw buckets of mud at you, lob hand grenades at you and shoot at you, and then see how accurate you are with a pistol.
At point blank range must be pretty easy.
At point blank, yeah, you could do it at point blank.
6 kills and then there's no point reloading costs.
5 kills. Be able to. 5 kills. You never carry a 6 chamber. Yeah. You never leave a bullet in. No. 6.
You don't want to lose your foot.
Yes. If you want to shoot yourself, by all means, go for it. But officers will carry a pistol for self-defense, and also to spray away at the enemy, just bang, 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 bang. And the enemy theoretically will be all stunned and shocked at these bullets coming their way, which gives his men time to get their rifles, pull the bolt back, load it, fire. That's the idea. That's the general idea. Again, jamming, pistols jam like mad. A lot more than rifles do, so I wouldn't rely on a pistol in combat. As to pistols in these days, well, most people actually use swords. See all these films where they're fighting with rifles and stuff? Now they use swords. Everybody used a sword. Everyone carried a sword. Some soldiers carried clubs. Some soldiers carried maces. So the officer has an officer's sword, and he will actually use that in combat when it comes down to it. But he does have a pistol. The pistol is used for 2 things. Firstly, you can shoot at someone running at you and try and save your life, you know. But mostly it's to signal. So if you are a sergeant, if the men can't hear you over the din of battle, then you fire your pistol to let your men know to fire, things like that. You can use it as a signal. Also, they used to put different coloured feathers in the pistols as well. The officers would have wads of feathers painted different colours. And do you know why we use flares? You fire a red flare meaning one thing, a green flare meaning another thing, blue flare. Well, the officers would fill their pistol with one particular coloured feather. And he would fire it in the air, and so you would see a cloud of red above the officer, or a cloud of yellow, or a cloud of green, and then the men would know what that signal meant. Bet you didn't know that. No, neither did I until I joined the SEAL. Not. But apparently that is what they often used to use feathers to signal. Which is quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it would be better if they'd have had a string with 2 paper cups on the end. It might have been better at communicating, but feathers will do, I suppose. You could always shift over to carrier pigeons, smoke signals.
Well, War One's carrier pigeons.
Yeah, carrier pigeons, yeah, because the radios were naff anyway. So that's the command unit. You've got a nice little flag that you can use instead of the flag bearer, or you can actually use the flag bearer and carry a flag. So it's entirely up to you. Incidentally, I know this guy's supposed to be holding a flag. When I've already done a few of them, I've got some of the infantry boxes. I didn't use him as a flag bearer. I used a pikeman as a flag bearer, because the pikemen are just posed better to hold the flag, I think. So I used this guy as an aide. I don't know if you're going to be doing the same, but we're doing a slightly different game. Any more questions on the officers?
No.
No. Okay, one last thing. The sergeants carry this halberd or billhook or whatever you want to call the different weapons that he carries. That's because he doesn't do heavy lifting, he doesn't carry a pike, so he uses a dangerous pointy-ended thing to hack away at the bad guys. And it's also handy to signal with because you cover it in different coloured pieces of ribbon and you can wave it in the air as a signal. Senior officers carried their own flag for signalling as well. So yeah, that's where you go. That's the officers. What's next?
Cavalry.
You've got the cavalry.
Which ones?
They're all the same.
Right, I'll give you one of these.
Yep.
And I'll give you one of these.
Well, here we have the horses. The horses, a little bit of galloping. They're not that animated. This chap here is sort of at full sprint. The others are sort of galloping along or trotting, and this one is useful for a more sort of standing around sort of figure. They have pistols in the saddle, which you put on the saddle. English Civil War, in fact most cavalry up to the First World War really, they carried a brace of pistols. So you would usually carry a carbine, a sword, a sabre, and a brace of pistols. And that's when you get really in close combat, you're not waving your sword around like in films. You use your you use your carbine at range. In this case it would probably be something more like a firelock. They also had a double barrel one, which is you twisted it round. You had two barrels, one on the top, one on the bottom. And you can fire one and then twist it round and fire the second one. That's quite cool, isn't it? Yeah. They also used blunderbusses as well, which were rather large guns that fired all sorts of...
Shrapnel, basically.
Yes, yeah, they were basically a shrapnel gun. I wouldn't like to be the one firing it, and if you used a blunderbuss on horseback, you had to put padding on the horse's head because the noise would scare the living daylights out of the horse and it would bolt and you'd fall off. So the cavalry would ride up to the enemy, they would draw both pistols and fire both pistols at the enemy. So you've got two shots from each cavalryman going into the enemy. Then you put your pistols back in, draw your sword and then begin hacking away. And you try and do it as little as possible. You sort of give them a swipe and then get out of there. Because if the enemy have got pike, then they're going to stab your horsemen. The idea is you've already shot the pike and now you're hacking away at the men with muskets. And I can tell you, being in a hedgehog with a pike, I was a pikeman, and having cavalry riding towards you, even though it's not real, is absolutely terrifying. It is absolutely, you're kneeling down, the horse is 8-9 foot tall with a screaming Welshman on the top, and it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying, and you just want to run away, even though it's not real. So imagine how these guys felt. And then the guy pulls pistols out, fires at you. He's already shot at you with his musket. And then the pikeman stood next to you is probably dead at this point. And then someone starts waving a sabre in your general direction. You're not going to have to... You're not really going to hang around there. However, if horsemen do decide to stick around, well, a musketman carries his musket, which is great for beating horses in the face with, and horses don't like that, they'll run away. And also you have your sword, which you can draw and slash away at the horse's legs, which will also make the horse not want to really be there. So hence the reason for firearms on horseback, because you will not get horses to go into that melee. You're going to need to clear the men in front so your horse will actually go close enough so you can whack at them with your sword. And what happens when you're waving a sword on the back of a horse?
Well, if you hit someone, you get flown off.
Yeah, you fall off, which is why they use a sabre and they use it as a slashing weapon. They don't stab. If you stab,
otherwise your sword gets stuck in someone and you do fly off your horse and get stabbed by the fangs.
Yes. So overall, being on horseback is awesome. I would never like to ride a horse into battle because it's remarkably dangerous. Then we have the figures. they're the figures. As you can see, they're carrying pistols or carrying swords. Again, these might come in quite handy for our regular infantry as well. Carrying muskets and stuff and swords, because most infantry use swords in combat anyway. So that's quite cool. So I would recommend getting the box of cavalry simply to use the spare parts as to give your infantry a lot more fighting power. That's of course if you're doing what we're doing. Most people are going to be playing big stand-up games with columns of pikemen and stuff. We're not doing that, are we?
No.
No. So you'll find out what we're doing later. Right, that's the cavalry out of the way. Oh, I'll just mention one last point. Cavalrymen wore these huge boots. Do you know why they wore the huge boots?
So the foot stayed in the, whatever you call the thing that hooks your foot on the horse.
Oh, it stayed in the saddle, yeah. So they were weighted, and it was the only way to keep you on top. Because if you tried to ride around and swing things around, you just fall off. You could tie yourself to the saddle by all means, but I won't do that if I were you.
Break your hip.
Yeah, you can have a bad day. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. Actually, I'll just mention a few things. You know the story of during the Civil War, the Royalist cavalry always would win. They'd always chase someone off. And then they would carry on going and carry on chasing them off. Mm-hmm. Whereas Cromwell invented a brand new thing that no one had ever thought of ever, which was once he defeated an enemy unit on when he was on horseback, he defeated an enemy unit, he would then come round and reform. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's not as simple as it sounds. The Royalists were using a tactic where when you defeat an enemy, you chase them down and destroy them. So when an enemy unit would break and run, your cavalry would then chase them and hunt them down and kill all of them in the field. Chase them to houses and set the houses on fire, hack them to death in the street. It's horrific. That's how the Royalists fought. The Roundheads, the parliamentarians...
Yeah, but you can still lose the battle.
But in the long game, and I'll get this first then. In the long game, you are fighting a war, not a battle. You are fighting one battle in a war. If you kill an entire enemy regiment, that regiment is out of the war. Permanently. It's gone. All those men are dead. So, even though you might lose the battle as a Royalist, you will slowly win the war because you will win the war of attrition. Now what Cromwell did, he trained his troops to force men away, and then he would bring the troops back so they could fight again. Now they weren't as good the second time, but it was useful having an extra. It's basically you duplicated the amount of cavalry you have on the battlefield. That's how Parliament could win battles. But they lost far more men because of the way the Royalists fought. Do you get it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually way more complicated than that, and I'm trying to do the simple version for you. But there is that. Although it actually worked out for Cromwell because the amount of people turning against the king, and also foreign support as well was a big game changer. Anyway, that's besides the point. We'll skip along to the next one, which is the final one, which is the infantry. So here we have the infantry. We have a collection of muskets, all pretty finely detailed. You can see the little cotton burny thing, match. That's it. You can see the match on each one. It's very good, very detailed. Some of the muskets are for marching, some of the muskets are firing, some of the muskets are advancing. So you get a really good collection of poses and things. It's great. I think these are some of the best figures of the English Civil War range. They're really good quality. Believe it or not, I got a box of these originally because I was going to convert them for a very British Civil War, and I was going to use them as the Royals, not the Royalist forces. What do you call those guys over there?
The Anglican League. Anglican
League. Yes, I was going to use them for the Anglican League. And I was going to put World War II equipment on them. And of course, when I got the box, I realised that all this stuff that they have on their jackets is actually stuck to the figure. And I stupidly didn't check before I bought the figures, but we're going to go into Civil War anyway, so we ended up with some spare figures, so we've got some extra into Civil War figures. So all these are little pouches, that's where your powder is and your shot, and you put your shot in and your powder in and then you fire it. So every soldier carries a load of these. The sprue has a number of these guys. It also has one guy in armour there, who's fully decked out in armour, and some unarmoured pikemen. Now the figures are that good, that the way they're shaped, that you can actually paint the jackets all in jacket colour, or you can paint a breastplate onto it, and it actually looks just as realistic if you paint it silver, well, blacky silver colour, gunmetal, as it does if you paint it sheepskin. So I've discovered that during my painting, so it looks quite good. So you could class these as armoured pikemen simply by painting the jacket. And if you look, the jacket does, you can get away with doing it. Anyway, we're not using pike in our game, are we?
No.
No. So we're not going to be doing traditional English Civil War. We're not going to be using any pikes, and you'll find out why later. So, any questions on the infantry?
Yeah, they're dumb.
Why are they dumb?
Well, if I was fighting in the Civil War and I was Cromwell or King, I would fit all my men with crossbows instead of them guns. Because the crossbows go straight for that flimsy armour.
Believe it or not, the Royalists did use crossbows.
Well, there we go then.
And they were considerably more effective than what you might assume.
I mean, guns are useless.
Yeah, the Scots used a few crossbow units, and the Irish used crossbows as well. They're much more rapid firing, much more accurate than a musket. However, with my own experiences, I can tell you, having a bunch of guys fire fake bullets at you, as in fire an empty chamber at you, is absolutely terrifying. It also creates a huge amount of smoke. You can't see the enemy, there's people screaming at you, and you fire, all the muskets fire.
Well, no, because you'll fire first because you have a way longer range.
Oh, yeah.
They march really close to you, then shoot.
Yeah, oh well, muskets only got a range of about 50 yards.
So a crossbow would take them all out before they even get to you.
A crossbow, you can get about 90 out of it, so you can technically fire half again. You're not going to be doing much damage at that range. But luckily most of the enemy aren't armoured, so that's a benefit. But it's really the morale effect that the musket has. Muskets are...
But clearly the soldiers on the other side would know that muskets aren't going to hit you. Well, they get 5 people in the first volley.
Yes,
and
that's true.
The others
that's
go
true,
way
yeah.
above your head or below.
Yes, and some will just bounce off. But people were hit by musket balls that bounced off because they just simply didn't have the pump behind them to actually penetrate your coat. But if you got the right amount of powder, the right size ball, which wasn't all that often because you often got the balls that didn't fit the muskets often. They were too small, and so they wouldn't come out with enough force. And you have the right amount of powder. That takes a lot of training to do that. So yeah, you are not going to kill a huge amount of soldiers using your musket. True, I will give you that. And you will kill a lot more if you're using crossbows. But it was just more fashionable to use muskets along with pikes.
Nah, crossbows.
It was.
I just use crossbows. Straight up fit my army.
Alright, you're the Duke of Sheffield. That's it. You're the Duke of Sheffield, right? And you're raising Sheffield, whatever you call them, Steelers, and you're going to go and fight Parliament in name of King, right? Okay, so you're going to raise a regiment. Now all your mates have got regiments. You know, the guy over in Doncaster, that he's got a royalist regiment with all this silly stuff on. The guy up in Pontefract, he's got another regiment and he's backing Parliament, he is, right? And they've got muskets in their army and they march up and down the streets drumming up to get people to join, and they have muskets and they have pikes.
Yeah.
and then you turn up with all your men in crossbows,
Yeah. And
people look funny at you.
then I fight them, and they realise that I just slaughtered the Duke of whatever you said, Pontefract. He's dead now.
I don't think that's very fair for the Duke of Pontefract. I think you just picked on him.
No.
Just because his coats look better than yours, and he's wearing a proper musket.
Yeah, and he's dead now, so...
Yeah, well, I think you're just picking on him. I just think... No, honestly, it was really down to that. It was really down to, oh, these guys look really cool. I mean, we've already discussed, Wellington wanted to reissue the British Army with longbows. And Napoleon suggested giving all the French army crossbows rather than muskets. Cause
they all tried.
Because everyone knew that it's rubbish technology. Everybody knew the rifle was rubbish, and the musket was twice as rubbish as a rifle. These are less useful than a rifle. A rifle's better than that. I mean, you got a 1 in 5 chance of hitting something at 50 yards with a musket. With this, it's what, 5%, if that. That's even if you can get your balls to come out at the end. So it's, however, one thing a crossbow does not have, which a musket does have, which may also go into the reasoning behind why to issue them. What can you use this for when you're not shooting it?
Bash someone's skull in.
Bashing someone's skull in. It's basically a club with a steel plate at the base to smash people's face in. What can you do with a crossbow? Not much.
Well, just toss the Russians and they'll give you some Molotovs, get them fine.
Yeah, I don't think Molotovs have been invented at this point.
Easy, just
actually they may have been.
Just get a bottle. I saw someone who was drunk accidentally created one.
Yeah,
right?
probably. Yeah, barn fires were very common, especially where you have firemen. But the musket is very good in close combat. It's a heavy duty piece of metal and wood. You can wield it as a club, you can hit people with it. It does have a steel base which can do considerable damage to your skull if you can connect with it. And you can also fit a socket bayonet to the end. Now, there weren't a huge amount of socket bayonets around at the time. They used to just plug it in the end, actually. It wasn't a socket. It was like a cone with a cork end, and you just slotted it into the end of your musket. And you could use it to stab with, you could use it as a spear, basically. Or you can just beat with your rifle. Failing that, you can draw your sword and fight with that. So really the benefit of the musket is probably as a close combat weapon rather than having something like a crossbow, which is not a close combat weapon. You are only relying on your sword when you're in combat.
Yeah.
Although you are right. So had people had crossbows, they would have been better.
Well, not really though, because thinking it through, once they realise that I'm winning because of that, they'll fit all their troops with crossbows, and then we'll be another stalemate.
Yeah, what else was saying? There's a saying in the military. Your brand new shiny weapon will be used by the enemy in so many months or so many years. So many months back then, so many years. So you invent the new ballista to fire at the enemy, and the next time you do a siege, they've got them. It's really annoying. So any special weapon you come up with, they'll come up with one too. Until you can find a use for it. Bear in mind, the crossbow had been invented by the Greeks, and the Greeks didn't really use them. They had them, they didn't use them. The Romans used crossbows, handheld crossbows, in sieges. They found them very useful in sieges, but other than that, the Romans didn't use them either. In fact, the Romans had a repeating crossbow, which was a crossbow with a sheath of bolts, which you could fire continuously. Fire, I don't know, 8 shots, however many darts you had. And again, that was used in sieges, the same as the normal crossbow. But other than that, the Romans didn't really find a use for it. So it never really became common usage. So during this period, the musket had come into its own. And as I said earlier, it may actually be because the musket is better in close combat. Most people died in close combat, not by shooting. Because when you get in combat, you're actually trying to kill each other, not firing things. The whole point of firing is to scare the living daylights out of the enemy. Right, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that the end? Right, so now you've finished victimising the Duke of Pontefract. I think we're more or less done. So that is the
Starter army.
try and get the right box up. That's it. That is the starter army for the English Civil War. So we're going to be doing English Civil War, as I've already mentioned. It is not going to be the big lines of regiments stuck out everywhere. It's going to be a lot more interesting and fun than that. And you'll get to see what we're doing later. Although you may have already seen a few bits and bobs in our other videos, so yeah, we'll see. And don't forget the flags. These are actually very, very well made flags.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they've actually put quite a lot of effort into the flags on these. The flags you get in... Where's the box go? The flags you get in this box are much the same as these, but they're not the quality that these are. These are actually King's colours. They're a lot better. A lot better. Just thought I'd throw that one out there.
So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think of the starter army and our English Civil War.
Yeah.
That's everything from me.
And everything from him. Thank you very much.
Bye.